Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all well. I hope you are all having a great Provine show so far. We're very happy to have you back here with us for the first of 5 sessions we have planned for day 2 here at the Spirits Business Hub. My name is Melita Kiley and I am the editor-in-chief of the Spirits Business magazine, and we are delighted to be back here for a second year with the Spirits Business Hub, hosting seminars every day. And we also have our bar that will be opening shortly if you fancy sticking around and having a drink with us at some point in the show. I'm really looking forward to getting into our first conversation of the day to discuss how technology is shaping modern distillery operations. And I'm delighted to be joined by Stuart Maxwell, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Proof 8. Stuart, to set the scene and give some context, can you give us a little rundown of what Proof 8 is and what you do and the goals that you have?
Yeah, so Proof 8 is an operational ERP system built specifically for the spirits industry. We've been running for about 5 years now, and we've grown the business quite a fair amount actually certainly in the last 2 years. We've been working hard on introducing lots of different functionality across the globe. So we're currently in the major key markets: the UK, Ireland, US, and looking to expand that globally as well. So yeah, that's it.
Amazing. And from your perspective, why should technology be central to distillery operations rather than an option?
I mean, distilleries by their nature are actually quite complex beasts. The regulatory reporting that a distillery has to abide by, not just in the UK, but particularly in the US, it's very, very difficult for distillers to keep track of that. Not using technology is almost not an option, to be honest. Having some sort of system to try and take that information and put it into a format that spits out the right things for the right people at the right time is absolutely essential. Having something that you can trace your products back to its source is absolutely huge as well. Having that traceability, you just really can't do that on spreadsheets. It's very, very difficult. People generally have quite a few different spreadsheets that are run by different people. Maybe the one person knows how that spreadsheet works versus someone else who doesn't know, and it's central to their business. So having a single system that can really bring everything together, reduce that complexity, it's absolutely essential to distillery operations today.
I think it's really interesting to hear the efficiency that the work that you do and the technology that you have can really help distilleries improve how they operate. And what are some of the main operational problems that you see distilleries have and that they're trying to solve at the moment?
I mean, outside of the compliance reporting, which obviously is super important, most of it's around visibility of stock, understanding where the stock is, how much you've got. Are you running low? Do you need more? How do you pre-order? The systems should be built to give distilleries that insight straight away. As I say, there's only so much that free technology or technology not built for the spirits industry can provide in that space. So having that visibility is absolutely critical. We speak to customers all the time who they have their SKU, for example, it needs this amount of dry goods. They want to have a minimum amount in stock. What our platform does is it alerts them when they run to a certain point, so they can set a minimum threshold that alerts them that they need new stock for that particular SKU. So having visibility is absolutely critical. The other major part is traceability. So being able to trace your products back to a field or to a particular source. A lot of the distillers we speak to, especially at the craft level, they're looking to have that authenticity, that traceability back to a particular source to say, look, we're an organic distillery, for example. We speak to a couple of people who are organic distillers, and they want to be able to prove that all the way through their process. So they'll set up their processes that means that they can show that, but they really want a system to just guide it through their processes to bottle, and that's what we offer, and a lot of people love that they have that traceability, and that helps a lot with their authenticity, because it's such those traceability and authenticity are like two of the biggest topics that we hear from brands today. Like having that ability to say authentically, yes, this is who we are, and I can show you, and it's all in one system. It's not in a myriad of different spreadsheets. It's not in a different place. It's not in a system that's not built for the industry. They need something that they can go to quickly to pull the information. You don't want to waste time going through different, and some people even speak to still have paper records as well, which is crazy. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. And, they have to then translate it, which then leads to human error. And the other thing that we do quite a lot of is we have a lot of validations in the system as well to help people, to prevent people from making mistakes. Can't do that in a spreadsheet. Once a number's in and it's wrong, it's wrong. And then that can lead to a whole huge range of complexities and problems later on. Whereas systems these days quite typically have key validations in place because it's built by people who understand the industry and understand, like, you shouldn't do this. This is going to cause you a problem. So we'll put a validation in place to stop you from doing something silly and, cause you problems later on. So that saves people a lot of time. So yeah, traceability, visibility, compliance reporting, and validations are some of the 4 key efficiency drivers that we see for distilleries today.
And traceability, that's something that we've heard a lot from different brands and categories in the industry, especially from the consumer side as well. Like, they're so much more curious these days about where their products are made. They want to know where the grains are sourced, what farm does it come from, when was it harvested, and the ability for the technology that you have to kind of easily collate all of that data and make that available must be hugely valuable to brands.
It's massive. And especially now with so many brands, particularly within the whiskey space, and probably gin as well, I'd argue, are premiumizing more and more. There's still people talking about premiumizing. Some brands still think there's a way to go in premiumization, which is, it's it's not my area of expertise, but an interesting debate nonetheless. But being able to, if you're going to sell a premium product at a premium price point, the demands from your consumers will be high. If you're going to pay £100, £200 for a bottle of spirits, it's got to be a really justified reason for that, right? So you have to be able to go back and say, okay, if I know that my spirit is good, and this is how, and I can show the consumer that. So having, scannable technology, we've seen it with NFC tags on bottles, which we've worked with before, QR codes on bottles and casks, being able to pull information very, very quickly to say, look, here we go, this is your stock, and this is the information we hold on about this stock digitally. Particularly when distilleries run private cask programs, that's massive. Being able to pull that information and have it digitally, and being able to prove the authenticity. I mean, that's something that we work with quite a lot. We work with distilleries who have private cask programs, and I think we discussed this before, like how much of a problem that is just now with brokers and some bad brokers doing some pretty bad stuff and selling casks selling the same cask 3 or 4 times. Being able to prove authenticity and trace it back. Look, this is your cask, this exists. We offer a free platform called Metacast where consumers who've purchased casks with a distillery that have Proof 8 can log into a digital wallet and see their cask, so see the picture of the cask. And every time we bring a cask into the system, it's its own digital ID, and so that digital ID is completely unique. And you can only assign one owner to that, or if it's a fractional group, you can of owners, you can assign it to that person as well. And that gives people great confidence that yes, my cask exists. I've paid a lot of money, typically thousands of pounds for this asset. I can see what it is. It's not just a case of a bit of paper, which is the typical industry standard in a delivery order. We have this digital deed program that gives you that real comfort that there's only one ID. I have my digital wallet. I can see my cask in that wallet. We allow people to take pictures and upload it as well, so you can see physically if it's a nice stenciled cask in or you've signed it. You can see all that as well. So, that the traceability piece is massive, not just for the premium products, but for casks as well. It's so it is a huge problem, and there's no regulator coming to the rescue, particularly within Scotland, to bail out the industry and give it a catch-all solution. It's up to people like ourselves and some of our competitors to try and provide the solution to the industry to give people that comfort and confidence in the industry going forward, so that they can charge premium prices for these products, because they are great products. There's a lot of great distillers doing a lot of great stuff, and we are here to help enable that. We're not here to get in the way or block or anything. Our technology comes into the distillery, the process, and just enables it to be better than what it is without the technology. And yeah, traceability, authenticity is absolutely huge, and we spend a lot of time working with distilleries for that.
Yeah, hugely important. And you touched a little bit already on efficiency and time saving as well. What specifically are the key areas where you see distilleries losing time at the moment?
Yeah, probably the most common is translation from paper records into a spreadsheet, or even if it is a system. That is such a huge time waste. I see it all the time with people who diligently are writing down their fill volumes for a cast, for example. They're going over to the computer, they type it in. I mean, the number of times there could be a mistake along the way there is huge, and it does happen. And then trying to, especially if it's spreadsheets, trying to unwind that is a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. And what we do is we have to give them a platform that they can just do this all digitally on a phone or any mobile device, tablet, anything that's connected to the internet. We're a cloud-based platform, so you don't need an app or anything on the phone. Just simply a link to the website and a login. You can go to your cask filling station and you just simply type in your number. Sometimes we offer a service to scan in. If it's weights, you can scan like a screen and it'll input the weights into the system for you, for example. And that just removes so much more of the opportunity for error. We operate a kind of task-based platform. And so what I mean by that is that you can have one person who sets up the task and inputs data, but then you can have someone else who approves it. So then that gives another double check before something goes into the system, because the biggest time waste that a distillery will typically have is unwinding mistakes. And that is particularly prominent in the US because of the strict regulatory reporting. Unwinding those, if they get it wrong, is a nightmare. So that's one point, is cost saving and time saving from a paper to digital perspective. We just do it all digital. The other aspect to that is our system. If we have two companies, for example, that have got Proof 8, these two companies can talk to each other. So if you do a shipment from one company to another company that's got Proof 8, it's an automatic transfer of those assets to that system. So it's almost like a one-click delivery. That doesn't happen just now. What happens is that from one system to another, they'll have to download a CSV or an Excel file, send it to the recipient. They then have to upload it into their system, double check it's all right, put it into the format that works for them. We don't do that. We offer a system of just simply shipment to dispatch, whilst protecting the confidentiality of the shipper and the person who's shipped that stock. So that's a massive bit of work we've done to enable that, and that our customers really, really like that. And then I know I've touched on it before, but I'll touch on it again, the compliance side of things. That's again a huge efficiency saving, very particularly within the US because of how strict and complicated the regulatory reporting is. So yeah.
And in terms of the size of distilleries that you work with, are there any limitations there? How closely are you able to tailor this technology to what a distillery specifically needs for how it operates? Because there are so many nuances within a distillery, as much as there are similarities in how they work. So how do you at Proof 8 navigate that side of the business?
I mean, one of the actual joys of my job is being able to go to every distillery, because every distillery is unique. Okay, they have all central processes. I mash, I ferment, I distill, I mature, but they all have their own unique little niche or something that's unique to them. So the size is genuinely irrelevant. We've got customers who have barrels in the small hundreds to ones that have had hundreds of thousands. So size is genuinely irrelevant. We tailor our approach to we've basically built the platform from the ground up. So we're an independent platform. We've built it specifically for the spirits industry, and we build it with distillers in mind. I worked at Grants for 11 years, and particularly within operations and technical development. So I've taken that expertise and tried to apply it to the product, because I had massive frustrations with like some of the legacy systems that are out there. And I really wanted to try and create something that I would have loved to have had as an operations manager. And a lot of our employees are ex-spirits industry, because that insight is absolutely valuable when you're dealing with, okay, as I say, you're dealing with every distillery and it's got the same central processes, but they all have their own unique perspectives. So having that perspective is absolutely critical, and building it from the ground up is that's our approach. That's what we do. Yeah.
And for a distillery that knows it needs to advance digitally, and that there are ways that it could improve how it works, but isn't quite sure where they should start, what advice would you have for them?
Yeah, my advice is absolutely to start with the major pain points. Like think clearly, what are the big time wasters in your distillery? What are the things that are taking you long? Where are you having errors? Where are you having mistakes? Where you having to constantly fix mistakes? we have every time we talk to a new potential customer, we have an initial call where we're not there to tell them how to run their business. We're there to try and help solve those bigger problems. So we always ask them, like, what's your major pain points? Talk us through what are the things you're really struggling with. So, and inevitably, well, actually, it's a little bit surprisingly to me, quite often it's quite different for different customers. You would think it would actually be the same. But, you know, some people, for example, come to us and like, well, we need to be able to track bottling costs. Bottling costs are absolutely essential to us. We need to understand those costs. We don't fully understand that just now. Okay, that's fine. We can work with you when we do our demos and training and all that stuff. We tailor that very specifically to that person, and they fully embrace that part of the platform. For others, it's something else. Maybe it's inventory management, tracking, location tracking. That's a huge problem for them. And inventory accuracy is one of the biggest issues, particularly as you grow. The BWA put some stat out recently that 3,000 casts is the absolute maximum a spreadsheet can realistically handle before it just gets too complex. I would actually argue it's less than that, but that was their research. And so we try and tailor our training to like those particular pain points and whatever the customer needs. So that my other bit of advice as well. So start with the major pain points. My other bit of advice is people like to use spreadsheets early on, because it's comfortable, it's familiar, it's free-ish, obviously outside the Microsoft Office subscription. But that is probably the biggest danger as a seller could to get into very early, is relying heavily on a spreadsheet. Because as they scale, it gets more complicated and more complicated and more complicated. And what people tend to do is they tend to build their processes around a spreadsheet. Whereas if they have a system and they adopt a system early, they build the processes into the system and around the system and they welcome the guardrails that system offers. Spreadsheet dependency is probably one of the biggest problems that any distiller have. So I appreciate that people want to save costs in the early days, but it's a bit of a false economy in the long term, because as you scale and grow and your company gets bigger, it gets more complicated. Your spreadsheets get more complicated. They're not designed for the spirits industry. They're designed as an account management tool. That's all it is, effectively. And that is a huge problem. And there was one potential customer we spoke to quite recently who had over 100,000 barrels still in spreadsheets, and when they said to us, "Oh, we quite struggled to find our stock in location track." And I'm like, "Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah." So that's again, they've just grown up around it, and it's come to a point where we're like, "Oh, okay, we're really struggling with this, so we need to do something about it." So. Yeah, again, I think it's a false economy to rely heavily on a spreadsheet early doors, because it really does kill you in the long term.
Yeah, that's wild. That many.
That was crazy. I couldn't believe it.
And I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because as much as I think human nature, you're curious and you want to try new things, we are such creatures of habit as well. And kind of what feels safest. But actually, from what you've said, there are quite a few risks that also come if technology isn't embraced and utilized to make what people do much easier and safer to track such important parts of the business.
Yeah, it's massive. I mean, when I worked at Grants, so we used a legacy system that I won't name, but there was only so much you could really do on it, and a lot of the spirit planning took place on spreadsheets, and it relied very, very heavily on individuals. So much so that if they went on holiday, even the people within that team struggled to understand the spreadsheets and how it worked, and they were scared to touch it because, if you've worked with complex spreadsheets, you can make one mistake and you can ruin the whole thing. There might be macros running in the background on a spreadsheet or attached to it, or make that spreadsheet might be attached to another spreadsheet, and you get scared. You get scared very, very quickly. Whereas if you've adopted a system has a UI or a user interface that's consistent throughout. So it's less of a scary prospect to go into it to do stuff if you've used it for other things, on the system. Because again, one of the things that's quite common is that a spreadsheet one person uses will look extremely different to another spreadsheet. Different column headers, different figures, maybe even different units. It's a wild west. Whereas with a system, you adopt a consistency and a consistent approach throughout, making that part look so much easier. So if people do go on holiday, or more likely people leave your business, you're not going scrambling. Oh, can you do a full handover, before you go, or God forbid somebody goes off sick, and then you're like, oh, I don't know how to work this. Because this is such and such a spreadsheet, and they manage it, and they know all the formulas and know how it works. So you spend ages untangling all of that. It is, again, I think it's a huge false economy to rely on it early doors. If you're, when we're trying to reposition ourselves as quite price competitive as well, because we've heard from a few distillers just walking around yesterday, they had a system and they had to get out of it because of cost, and then they had to adopt something that they didn't like, and it's caused chaos within that business. So, it's important to us that we can we can work with small distillers or distillers of any size, but we can work certainly with the craft ones. They shouldn't be scared to adopt a system early, because we're there to work with us. As I say, most of our people in our company have worked in the spirits industry, so they understand your pain, they understand a lot of what you're going through. Yeah, I know keep harboring the same point, but it is a huge issue just relying on spreadsheets early on.
Yeah, but it's from what you're saying, it's clear that there are more efficient ways of working, and like you said, if something goes wrong, it is then even more time that it takes to correct that potential mistake. And I think one thing with the whiskey industry is that it is a category that is so steeped in heritage, and it has this incredible history, and so many distilleries, they go back hundreds of years. When you're working with distilleries, how do you ensure that, that heritage and that story and that history and the craftsmanship that goes into making whiskey is, intact while improving how they work with more modern technology?
Yeah, I mean, the technology doesn't replace craft, it enhances it. I touched on the point earlier about distilleries, particularly within Scotland, being able to have that traceability is so important, and it actually protects the craft much more than it ever endangers it. A lot of what we do is not front end. It's very much in the operational level. It's in the background. It's on site. It's on the ground. Distillers that have that heritage and that history, they need a system to protect it. They need a system that enhances that craft, enhances that traceability, because as I said to you, that as the industry's gone through this premiumization wave, they're selling bottles for sometimes thousands of pounds. If you can't go to a consumer and sell that story and prove that authenticity, you're not going to get a buyer. They'll look at other luxury goods that can. There are other parts of the luxury industry that offer that traceability, that authenticity, and they say, look, this is where this came from. This is where we, with the product's heritage. And it came from this source, and it's sustainable, and being able to prove that is absolutely massive. And we've quite thankfully not come across too many distilleries who are got that heritage, are adverse to technology change. They are more often than not quite welcome to it. I think where we do see some danger is that a lot of them are maybe tied very much to a legacy system, even if that system that isn't bespoke to the spirits industry, and that they're scared of the change of moving to something a bit newer, even if they can see the benefits. The change curve in these things is big. You're very often have conversations with people, especially in the early stages, and I say, this is your level of effort here. This is where you're going to need to go to. Okay, we don't hide that there's going to be a change, but this is where you're going to be. So it's a net. You're going to be net positive once we're finished with this, but there's a hump to get over, and it's sometimes trying to convince people to get over the hump, particularly those who've been doing something the same way for a very, very long time on a legacy system that nobody likes or very few people like. It's trying to get them over the hump to say, this is where you could be. You could be in a really great place efficiency wise. You could be really there's more options to sell to your consumers. You give your consumers better options, better traceability back to a certain a point, or tracing it back to the grains, because some of the legacy systems don't do any production at all. Our system does, from grains then all the way to bottle out, as do some of our competitors. But a lot of the legacy systems start at the point that spirit's made, so you can't actually ever prove it to go back, or you can, but it takes a very, very long time. You certainly can't show it to a consumer because the information is just not readily available. It's a difficult one. But no, the heritage piece is something that does get mentioned quite a lot. But no, the technology that we have very much enhances and protects the brands rather than puts them at any danger whatsoever.
Again, it's that human nature element, isn't it? That we don't really like change to begin with. No. But actually, once you kind of get through that uncomfortableness and the bit that you don't like, the positives can vastly outweigh any negatives that you maybe anticipate.
Yeah, no, 100%. And we're human, right? Everyone everyone in the room here and in the hall knows that change is hard, and of course you might see the benefits and you can see clearly, I can see how this might work, but getting over that hump, especially if especially with some of our bigger customers, getting through to operators at the ground level that this is how we're changing things. I mean, in my old jobs, I had guys who'd worked there guys 25, 30 years, had been with the business through all sorts of different change, and the cynicism was off the charts in some cases, and trying to get them to embrace this change that the business has decided to go through could sometimes be really, really challenging, and it's probably sometimes the hardest part of my job. But it's as a leader, it's one of the hardest things you can do is bring people through a change, because sometimes it's really hard for people to see what the benefits are. That's why we spend so much time trying to build the platform from the ground up, because from my own experience, trying to get people to learn a new part of our system, whether it was an inventory management system or not, and trying to get them to bring them along with the change, it's really, really tough. So we've tried to think very clearly about how does this work, not at the high level with the CEOs and the COOs. It's how does this work for the guy in the shop floor? How is this going to work for them? Are they going to be able to understand it? Are they going to be able to use it? Is it clear to them what things they need to do? Do they understand the guardrails that are in place with this system that's there to help protect them? It's not there as a barrier to their job. Sometimes we get people who are frustrated to say, I can't do this thing. Well, that's because you've tried to put in you've tried to bottle a cask of whiskey you tried to create a finished good of whiskey at like 39% or something like that, then they get frustrated, but actually there's there to help protect them. So yeah, the change curve is difficult, but we work very, very closely with our customers. As I say, most of us are quite a lot of the people post sales are ex-spirits industry, so they get it, and we can help guide them through. And most of them I've worked with, including myself, with operators on the ground level before, so they very much appreciate that it can be hard, but the benefit's ultimately worth it in the end.
And I want to talk a little bit more actually about how we can, kind of bring people through along with the company when these changes are implemented, because technology is moving so quickly, and I'm sure everybody has seen questions posed, articles online about, is AI coming to take our jobs and all that sort of discourse. But can you go into more specifics about how you at Proof8 kind of support companies that are implementing more digital ways of working, but ensuring that, this isn't a case of replacing the human element of the work or replacing people as employees, but actually just enhancing what they're doing, making their jobs easier and more efficient, and making sure that they are supported with the company and being brought along with those changes?
Yeah, I mean, we take a very, very hands-on approach. One of our kind of core values as a business is to be the best customer service provider for the software, as a software company, to the spirits industry as we can be. So we're very hands-on. Even if it's quite far, we will travel to sites to bring them on board and bring customers on board. That's a cost to us in a lot of cases, but for me, it's absolutely essential to be there on the shop floor, working with the operators, working with the key people to get them on board with the system. Because very often, the people that we initially talk to who are making the decision to buy the system are not the people that will be using it. It's the filling store manager, it's the distillery operators, it's the people who are literally there. They'll be the ones logging all the tasks and all the inputs into the system. So we do our best to we're still a small business, but we do our best to travel as much as we can, go to sites, bring the people along with us on the change. See, we're not scary people. We're not sitting in an ivory tower far away. We're not just shoving this system into you and you've just to get on with it. We're very much a hands-on approach, and for me that's absolutely essential. This is it's almost a non-negotiable. Obviously, there are some circumstances where the cost may be too high, and in those circumstances we will. We'll schedule very regular calls. When somebody brings the platform on board, we go into a process that we call hypercare, where we're basically on call. It's a case of anytime you're unsure, anytime, and we give our contact details to almost everybody who's going to be using the platform, and they can message us at any time, say, look, I'm not sure about this, or I'm stuck on this, or I'm getting this error, and we'll explain that to them, because that helps us in the long term. It's a really short term pain, because it's a lot of work for us, and it's a lot of messages after hours, particularly when we're dealing with customers in the US. But for me, it's an absolute non-negotiable, because you can't just put something in somewhere and then just leave them, even if you give them good user guides or whatever, because a lot of these systems they're quite vast, and every distillery is a bit different, so they're using the platform very differently. One thing I recommend to people who come on board is to write down how you're going to use the system. Develop your own work instructions for how you're going to use it, because the way you use it is going to be different to how someone else uses it. And our user guides will give you the general gist of how the platform works, and how, what validations are there, and how to progress the thing, how to progress your materials through your distillery. But you may have something that you want to do that the platform can offer that nobody else is doing. So you write these things down, get them embedded, get them trained out to your employees. We'll help with that. We're more than happy to help with that. But it is essential, because, as I say, if you're just jotting down notes as you've brought the platform on, very quickly you might lose those notes. And it's the same problem we just talked about earlier with people writing down cast volumes, and then they lose a bit of paper. It's the same thing here. If you're just jotting down notes when you come in, you might lose that, and then you're like, oh, I've forgotten how to do this, or I've lost my bit of paper. Can you talk me through it again? Get it written down, get it embedded. We'll be there through the whole process. And eventually what happens is, 3 months down the line, the calls drop off, they move out of hypercare and just into general customer service after that. So
I think it's reassuring to hear that there is that support, and then it's a longer term collaboration almost between what you do and how you work with distilleries, rather than just, here's the technology, off you go, and now you're left to your own devices, because it is a learning process, and it's continuously developing as well.
Yeah. I mean, I have this conversation quite a lot, because what our system and our competitors are the same. These are not plug-in and on top of your processes. This is your process. This is no longer a case of, because quite a lot of SaaS companies, software as a service, they just sit alongside your existing processes. Oh, this is helping me do this thing. No. Our system is an operational ERP system that becomes your process, all of your processes. So, that support is absolutely essential, because it's changing. It's completely changing the way you work, for the better. But it's not just something you just hand over and then let them go on with it. It's something that you really need to help guide these people along. And again, everyone's got slightly different levels of comfort with technology as well. Again, that's quite a common thing we see. Is some people we come to and we talk to customers and they go, yeah, I totally get that, that's fine, let me just crack on with it, and that's great. And then other times we speak to people and technology is not their thing, and that especially at the ground level, and sometimes they're very, very happy with a spreadsheet, and all of a sudden they've got to move away from that, and that's super scary. And I totally get that. I've been there. I've had many people in my team, in my operations role, that were like that. They really, really didn't like it. But we're there to help. We're there to support, and we spend a lot of my time especially spent helping people get on board with it, understand that what the system's there to do. It's there to help and improve their efficiencies, improve their processes, protect them from errors as well. A lot of what we do is there to protect people. And yeah, it's quite common, but it's something we work on hard to. Yeah.
And you touched on the US a little bit earlier in our conversation, and I know when we've spoken before as well, you've mentioned how the US feels a little bit more open to implementing more digital ways of working across its distilleries compared with parts of Europe. What are you seeing here, and why is it important that distillers don't get left behind when it comes to digitalizing how they work?
Yeah, I mean, the US is it's been an eye opener for us over the last certainly 6 to 8 months, as we've gotten more and more US customers. The TTB reporting is brutal. It's super, super difficult. Really, really complicated. A lot of forms. Everything's got to be in certain accounts. Everything's got to be really well accounted for. And so very often when we talk to US customers who are looking to come on board, most of them have a system already, or they certainly have something to help with the TTB reporting. And so they're already kind of, there's a kind of cultural thing there where, again, as I mentioned earlier, they're built their processes around the system, and they understand that that's needed to help enable them to just do this automatic TTB reporting. It's not really the same in Europe. Most of our customers are coming from spreadsheets, and as I said to you earlier, like they've built that dependency on it, and that becomes a little bit more harder to untangle and a lot harder for it to adopt. So there's definitely a slower adoption of technology within spirits operations within Europe, especially. US, they're again, because they need it, they just need it for the TTB report. Now, the ones I've spoken about earlier that had huge amounts of barrels stock and I don't know how they're doing the TTB report. They must have somebody dedicated. We've spoken to a couple of people who had a dedicated compliance person, and all they did was collate information for the TTB reports. That was their job, 9 to 5. Europe don't tend to have that, mostly because the regulatory reporting isn't as complicated. That's another thing as well. There's not the same driver to do something early on in Europe, where the regulatory reporting's not that difficult. Some countries are different from others, as we're learning lots, especially today, and yesterday talking to some people who have got distilleries in countries that we don't operate in. We talked to them about what do you need to do for your reporting purposes, and they all vary. Some of them super easy, just how do you need to do, give them a stock list at the end of the month. Some of them quite complicated. And that adoption piece, I think, is very much driven by the regulatory side, but and that's why we see a much more, comfort with adopting a technology or adopting a system in the US versus other countries, certainly in Europe.
And when it comes to technology, if we look outside of the spirits industry at other industries as well, where do you see the spirits industry in comparison to other sectors in terms of how much we have advanced with technology? Do you think we're behind? Are we ahead? And what are kind of the challenges there?
My feel is that the spirits industry is lagging behind a wee bit. Because, as I say, especially within more established whiskey industries, there's a bit of like, well, we don't need to really adopt this. It's not really necessary, but it's becoming much, much more necessary, as I mentioned earlier, about selling premium products or selling casks for a lot of money, being able to prove that authenticity, being able to go to a system, say, here it is, this is what we have, it's clear where it's come from, it's very well protected. It's absolutely essential. I used to, in one of my previous jobs, I was a raw materials chemist at Gantz, and so I worked quite closely with maltsters and grain merchants, etc. And you could see they were already adopting a lot of technology in agriculture, more so I think than the spirits industry is now. There was lots of different bits of technology that we were working with that was really cool, and I just don't think I think, as I say, in the US, there's more. They're probably slightly further ahead as a market than the rest of Europe. But as I say, it's becoming much, much more of a necessity to have a system or have improved technology. And there, we work quite closely with a company called Cocaine's, who are like a filling system. They're very well established in Scotland, have been for a long time. They've got customers in other parts of the world as well. But we have a partnership where we integrate with them. So they have filling systems, so we can integrate with a filling system. They can input the information automatically. That's new to a lot of people. That whole concept of like, oh, I don't need to transfer this information from one to another, or I don't need to do some jiggly boogie. I can simply have a software system and this hardware, and they'll talk to each other. And that's something that we offer as well, is that we offer integrations with other systems that companies already may have. Again, that's another barrier to adoption for our system, is they think, well, I've got Xero and I've got Sage or I've got QuickBooks to manage my inventory, but these are accounting softwares, they're not built for the spirits industry. So what we do is we'll offer integrations that mean that you can integrate with these systems instead, and that takes a lot of that fear away as well. So there's, as an industry, I think there's certainly a lot of progress. There's definitely a lot of progress. There are a lot of competitors out there. Much, much more so than there were even like 5 or 6 years ago. When I was at Grants, it was like one system, and that was this system, and everyone had that system. So there was a lot of like, well, okay, that's our lot. That is what it is. Nowadays, there's a lot more competition out there. And listen, every business needs to shop around and see what's right for them. The thing that we offer might not be the best for that business. That's absolutely fine. We respect that. We're very open to that. there's a lot of competitors out there doing some good stuff. So yeah, but the industry is progressing. It's definitely moving because there's more out there. There's more to choose from. There's more, there's lots of different options for different people. So it's behind, but it's getting much better. I think definitely getting much better.
And if we don't continue embracing technology as an industry, what are some of the biggest risks that you see potentially across the sector?
Yeah, I think trust is massive. Trust is again, I have come back to this point several times, but if you're selling products for a very high profit, or sorry, a high price point, you need to be able to prove it. Say, okay, I've got this bottle of 21-year-old, it's organic, it's come from this field. Okay, well, you need to be able to show me that, because I'm going to spend hundreds, if not thousands of pounds on this bottle. Or I'll just take my money elsewhere and I'll buy another luxury good that can give me that provenance and can give me that heritage, and there's a story and it's there and it's clear. That is a huge risk. Again, as I mentioned, the spreadsheet dependency is, again, it's something that comes across quite a lot, and it's, I feel for a lot of people, because it's so hard to untangle it the longer you've been using it, and also because when someone moves from one system to another, that system shuts off, their previous system shuts off, it's gone. So it's a burning platform, you have to go. Spreadsheets are not going anywhere. My spreadsheet still exists, my spreadsheet still has all my information, it's got my formulas, I'm comfortable with that. But the risks are still there, from errors to lack of traceability, lack of visibility, lack of poor inventory accuracy. Those risks don't go anywhere, even if it makes you feel comfortable that it's still there. And so we do see that sometimes with people who have got spreadsheets and they've taken us on. There might be like a few holdouts somewhere. They're maybe like, oh no, I've got my spreadsheet. My spreadsheet works. I don't want it to go away. Sometimes that's quite hard. We do everything we can, and ultimately, the business will make it. That distillery business will make a decision like, no, you have to get rid of it, or they'll do what they need to do to make sure that their business still runs the way they want it to. But yeah, there's many risks. Most of it, I think, is on trust, authenticity, traceability, particularly if you're selling products for a very high price point. Operationally, it's dependency on legacy systems, or depending on on spreadsheets. That those risks will never go away. They never go away. So it's adopt, or you could be left behind.
Is there any technology that you see is not ubiquitous yet in the industry? And if you were to look ahead to 5-10 years time, that actually it would be completely the norm that distilleries across the board are using?
I mean, the very, very obvious answer to that is adoption of AI, or integration of AI into software systems. We've seen, there's one competitor out there who says it can be done. I've not seen it. I'm not 100% sure it's quite there yet. But I would be shocked if in 5 years' time, every single operational ERP system within the spirit space doesn't offer some form of AI technology. It should be quite simple to open up your AI chatbot within your system and go, how many casks did I fill this week? How many were bourbon? How many were refill? How many were sherry? What's my long-term plan look like for this particular SKU? What stocks do I need to lay down? That will happen guaranteed within 5 years, if probably earlier than 5 years. And that adoption of or integration of an AI within your system is going to happen. You see already with, everyone's got Gmail or Microsoft. You've got Copilot or Gemini embedded within, they charge you for it, right? But it's there, and I've found some use of it. I don't think it's great, but that is 100% going to be part of every single platform within, certainly within the 5 years. We were already working quite hard on how we get it to work, because we don't want something to just be there and it's a bit useless. I mean, anyone who's used ChatGPT is put a question in, the answer they've gone out and go, that's rubbish. We don't want that. We want to make sure that it's done right, it's done properly, and our users are getting a lot of benefit from it. I mean, there's no other answer I could give. I don't think it would be as prominent as AI within ERP systems globally within the next 5 years, for sure.
I think it's a very interesting development in the tech space.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stuart, thank you so much for your time and for answering all of those questions. I think it's been a real eye-opener into how technology can really improve and make a more efficient and better industry. And we do have some time for some questions if anybody would like to ask Stuart anything while we have him here.
Do you think that there will be a time when distilleries will become fully automated and it can almost be not necessarily an at-home setup, but it will become a lot more accessible to the kind of home distillers to start from the ground?
Do you mean like distillery processes, like mashing, fermentation, distillation?
And you can experiment more with like different ingredients and mash bills and that side of things too.
Yeah, I think it could well happen. As I mentioned, I used to be the raw materials chemist. I used to visit a lot of maltsters. Those are already, they're massive operations, and there's nobody who does the night shift, but it's a 24/7 operation. So that already exists. It's adjacent. I think where it probably will always require at least one person to be on site at any point is because of loss of sampling. Yeah, of course. So, malting plants as well. They're using a lot of energy, a lot of heat. So there's still that danger there, but that's fully automated. But with distilleries, sampling is very, very important. A lot of distilleries I've worked with, certainly I do a lot of work with the CIBD, so I've been to quite a few big distilleries. There's one person. I'll give you an example. Ailsa Bay Grants is one person on shift. It's a 12 million litre of alcohol distillery. One person does the whole thing. So, that's as close as I think as close as we'll get from a distillery operations perspective. I've seen some people think that it might have automated warehouses one day as well. There's one company who I won't mention because they're launching an automated warehouse soon at WDSC in May. I've seen what they're offering, and that's a 0-person, completely dark barrel warehouse, which doesn't exist yet. So that could be a bit of a game changer. There are some dark warehouses for finished goods stock, so that exists. I've seen that myself, like over a decade ago. So I think you could have a point where there's generally maybe one distillery operator, and then you could, in theory, if you've got the money, put in automated barrel warehouses that don't require people to go in. I mean, barrel warehouses especially, they're really dangerous places. It's hard graft, working in a barrel warehouse. So if you can remove some of the health and safety implications or issues around there, that's massive. That's massive. And it's certainly, again, within finished good warehouses, it already exists. So yeah, that's all hardware, not rather than software. That technology is developing really fast, really, really fast, and some of it's quite exciting.
To follow up on that, do you think that will then kind of take the soul out of the industry a little bit in the process?
Yes, there will be parts. So this is where the brands will need to weigh that up very carefully. So we talked earlier about, the software technology will not change the soul of a distillery because it runs very much in the background. It's not our software, and our competitors' software will typically run it at, behind the scenes, as it were. If you replace a dunnage warehouse with a robot, that takes a lot of soul out of it. It definitely does. However, you absolutely have to weigh up, okay, from a safety perspective, is it worth it? Is it worth spending X amount of money to replace it? Maybe you keep a couple of dunnage warehouses for the tours, and then you replace other warehouses with that sort of technology. So there is absolutely a risk. I think the risk is fairly minimal if you adopt it in the right way, and you kept some of that hit. I mean, so much of it's marketing, right? So you can spin marketing any way you want in a lot of cases, right? So there's a risk. I think the risk can be mitigated. The more I'm talking, the more I think the risk can be mitigated for the purposes of, improving safety. Yeah, for sure.
Amazing. Well, Stuart, thank you again so much for your insights. It's been so great to chat. I'm sure Stuart will stick around for a little bit if you do want to come and speak anymore. And hopefully we'll see you back here for some of our later sessions today.
Yeah, thank you.